Today we have an unbelievable guest, Cattoni,
Looking for jobs, essentially. I wanted to travel, but I also needed money.
one of
So
the smartest entrepreneurs out there, one of the most humble.
a change in the way that brands need to communicate. And I think that that is such a great thing. Yeah, there's AI to help remove, gaps in audio, to help remove.
Good day, everyone. Welcome for tuning in to this edition of the CEO Mastermind podcast. Today we have an unbelievable guest, Cattoni. Super excited to share a conversation with you today. I've met Alex several times over the last couple of years. I've been following her work for a few years. And when I say she's the best copywriter on the planet, it's no joke. I encourage all of you to kind of go a little deeper into her style. She uses, a lot of human psychology and all the things that work, but she does it in a way that's modern, that's authentic, and that's genuine. I think, Alex, one of your taglines is like, without, taking the sleaze out of the online marketing world sometimes, or, the used car salesman feel, because although that quote unquote works, it does work, but it doesn't really feel authentic to most people. It feels like you're constantly hustling. And I think through today's conversation, you'll find that Alex is one of the smartest entrepreneurs out there, one of the most humble, authentic human beings you'll come across. And having met you several times in person, I completely vouch for that. So thank you for joining us today. Congratulations. I know about a year and a half ago, you were awarded the Marketer of the Year. I think that was in 22 or whatnot. So that's no easy feat. There's a huge amount of competition for that. So when I say you are the best, you are the best. And thank you for your time, both professionally and personally. So thank you, Alex. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Wow, what an introduction. Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'm honored to be here.
Great, thanks. Okay, so we're just going to go through a few topic areas, just so everyone knows. We could probably be here for days. Alex is a wealth of information. So we're going to stay high level and try to tackle a few key topics in the next 30 minutes. But first, for some of you who may not know Alex, can you talk about how you became interested in copywriting and then kind of what led you to start your own business?
Yeah, great question. So, like many people, I didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur when I, went to university. I actually studied business law and economics with a Bachelor of Commerce degree and thought I was going to be a lawyer. Through that journey, I decided I, wasn't sure if that was the right path for me. And that set me out on a bit of an adventure looking for jobs. Essentially, I wanted to travel, but I also needed money. So I was looking for jobs abroad. And that's how I stumbled across a company called Mindvalley, which is now one of the world's leading publishers of personal development programs online, and accepted an internship there. And that was when I just dove headfirst into marketing, personal development, and copywriting was something I never actually did at Mindvalley, but was made very aware of how powerful it was. And I did dabble in it, but was never officially a copywriter at that job. It wasn't until I left Mindvalley and decided to start freelance consulting that I realized what a need copywriting is. You hear people talk a lot about marketing. Well, copywriting is just marketing in words. And if you think about words and how they're used in sales and business, it's essentially everything. It's scripts, it's emails, it's ads, it's everything. And so to me, copywriting and marketing are sort of one and the same, except copywriting is sort of this additional skill set of knowing how to communicate in a very powerful and precise way. And I've always been a bit of a word nerd. And so I sort of fell into offering copywriting services as part of my marketing services back in 2011. So that's how I got into it.
Awesome. Yeah. And I agree with you in terms of, having spent my initial career in the Fortune 500 in the marketing, it is all about words. It's all about the insights and how you communicate your brand promise to make sure you over deliver on it. Most people think they're, having been in marketing for a majority of my career, everybody thinks they're a marketer, right? They, do this and do that, but they don't really understand that it is a high mix of both art and science, what you say and how you say it, in what order, and is it true with your brand, right? Because, hey, I've looked at the values of Amazon and what they say is not something that resonates with me. So you automatically know, hey, is this somebody or something I want to engage with? And I think that's the single biggest understood piece is that copywriting, in my belief, I think you'll share it as well, is a bit of art, absolutely. But it also is a bit of a science to it as well. It's not just willy-nilly. It's really hard to do really good copy. I mean, you tell someone to do a 5-hour speech and they'll probably whip it up and no problem and go forever. But you tell someone, why don't you do a TEDx talk in 13 minutes? That is copyright at its highest form, because you have to be able to resonate and communicate and create an overlap. So that's awesome that you're doing that. So with that, I'll flip into the next piece in terms about the art and the science of it. What do you believe are the fundamental elements of compelling copy?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned at the top of the podcast, this definitely, there's a lot. But if I had to really sum it up, and you said it beautifully, it's saying what you need to say in as few words as possible. But to think about really what is required to write great copy or be a great marketer, I like to break it down into the ABCs. It sounds so simple, but attention. You need to know how to grab prospects' attention. There are a lot of different ways to do that through compelling hooks and headlines. But when you understand that 80% of people do not read past the headline, 80% of people do not, read an entire social caption or read an entire landing page, knowing how to capture attention and then get people to continue to take action is probably the most important skill set in any copywriting or marketing. B, I like to say, stands for the big promise or the big benefit. So this is ultimately convincing your prospect why they need to be there and why they should listen to you. And so obviously this boils down to sharing relevant information in a way that your audience receives and understands that it's for them, and helping them either solve a problem or gain some sort of a benefit, getting them to stick around. And then of course the C's, which is a call to action. So it's one thing to get attention. It's another thing to make your audience feel like, oh, this is for me. And then of course the final thing is getting them to take some sort of action, whether it's to sign up, to click, to buy, to order now. And I can tell you, it sounds obvious, but a lot of people forget to tell people what to do next in their marketing. So, like I said, this could be a whole masterclass, but ABC, it's attention, benefit, and call to action.
Yeah, and you obviously have courses doing that. And in the show notes, I'll put the link to all your content, whatnot. So if people want to go a little deeper, they can. I have definitely engaged in it and loved it. And I think, I love what you said about the ABCs, because it really comes down to structure and having a modality in terms to assess what's in front of you. Like in the old days when I had the Kraft and Procter and Gamble, it was similar. So if I use quote unquote Fortune 500, like we said SEC, and I would have for every commercial that we shot or whatever, and the SEC is very similar. Where does it stand out? Does it engage? And does it communicate? And I think you're so right.
Cool.
we get so caught up in kind of all the fluffery and making sure it's long. And I've been guilty of this in my career, where you forget the fundamentals. I don't remember who said it, but you got to do the boring work. Right. And the boring work comes down to models and framework. And like you said, your call to action. That should be obvious, but it tends not to be obvious. And I've been guilty of doing that too. Oh, it looks so great. We get in our own mind. But it's really important to be in the mind of the consumer, your end avatar. What are they thinking? What are they needing? I heard the fact, I didn't hear the 80% fact, but I 100% believe it. I think I heard something like people will give you 3 seconds on your website, and then the drop off rate is like 90% per second or some silly number. It's like, if you don't have that attention, game over, So with that, obviously since you started your copywriting business 2011, a lot has changed since then. The iPhone was only 4 years old. There was no such thing as TikTok. I think all the kids are on TikTok now. Certainly not then. Facebook was new. But, do you feel that how has the art of copywriting evolved with all this plethora of, platforms? Because sometimes there's the medium and then there's the mechanics, and they get blurred, like TikTok and this and that and Clubhouse and all these sorts of things. Do you think that
Right.
The art of copywriting has evolved?
I definitely, like anything, think the art of copywriting has evolved, and I think one of the most obvious ways to understand that is just to look at ads from like the 70s versus now, but I think that it's evolved in response to a evolving market, evolving technologies, the way a consumer interacts with brands and businesses. And what you said at the top of the podcast, where a lot of people, can look at marketing and think, ooh, it's icky, it's salesy, it's used car salesman stuff. I do think that for a while, a lot of the people who had, I guess you could say, the marketing secrets were those, I'd call them promoters, like the type of people who just are naturally great at selling and didn't really care about the types of products that they were selling. And then there's this pendulum swing that's happening where everyone is getting access to marketing tools. You mentioned TikTok and all these social media apps. I mean, now marketing is not reserved to just a select few who have the power and sit in, Madison Avenue boardrooms. Everyone now has the power to create an audience. And so what you're actually seeing is people who genuinely care about the content that they're selling, care about the products that they're selling, have these tools accessible to them. And to me, that's really exciting because the pendulum is shifting, and it's putting viewership and reach and power into, it's decentralizing it. It's putting it into the hands of anybody. And to me, that's really exciting that anybody has the ability now to build a business, to solve people's problems, and to make money doing it. And I think that's why you're noticing a big shift in the way that people are communicating, because the market is savvier than it's ever been before. When online marketing first became a thing, I remember the first time I saw a landing page and I was so confused. It was like a squeeze page with an opt-in form. And I went to this quote unquote website being like, I don't get it. They just want me to put in, they just want me to put in my email address. Like, why? And it was just, everyone was very gullible because it was like, oh my God, this ad says that this is life changing. It's going to help me get more sleep, quit smoking, find the love of my life, and lose weight all in 24 hours, And I think what's happening now is the market's savvier than it's ever been, and they can smell BS from a mile away. And so there's almost like a change in the way that brands need to communicate. And I think that is such a great thing, because the people who genuinely love what they do and have really great messages that's being communicated. And then the people who have always just done it to make a quick buck are becoming less and less powerful and owning less and less of the market. And that, I think, is cool. And so we could go on and on and on about where marketing is heading, but I think a big part of it is audiences are getting smarter. They're taking longer to buy because they're taking longer to weigh options. They don't buy into that fake scarcity or the stuff that used to get people to act now. They want more control over their buying experience, and the brands and businesses who give them that and create that longer term kind of brand connection, they're going to be the ones that ultimately stand the test of time.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's a publication, global publication called Trend Hunter, and what they cover lots of topics around all kinds of areas. But one of the things that they talk about is the rate of change. So my observation is exactly what you just said, but the rate of change is accelerating. So we just exited and this was before AI blew up in November of 2022. The rate of change used to be every 50 years and every 25 years. We just ended a 5 year. Then coming into 2023, we were where the rate of change, where things would change, like double. We're now in that 3 year period, and lo and behold, we have AI coming. And I agree with what you said there, because a lot of times people confuse tools and change. And it's about going back to basics. And I love what you said, because if you have something or you have a message that you love talking about, that authenticity will shine through the fake scarcity and all the fake GPT stuff. Like I've always said, AI is an amazing productivity tool, but if you give me a $10,000 hammer, that's great, but it might help me be a little handy around the house. I'm still not a carpenter. Give it to my cousin who's a carpenter, or anyone, he or she that's a carpenter. They'll build the house faster. They'll get less injury. It's a tool that you still know how to use. And I think what's happening is those that return back to basics versus trying to gamify the system with AI and all this crazy, fake copy, I think my belief is the people who are real and authentic are the one that will benefit from this acceleration of change and the adoption of all these tools. Because consumers are too smart now. They'll snip that stuff from a mile away. So I totally agree with you, Tom. Speaking of that, like when you talk with your copywriting team and you could create the copy posse, whatnot, obviously personal branding and authenticity are sort of hand in one and really key. But how do you help your clients, or how do you help like an entrepreneur figure out how do they find their unique voice or what makes them different? Like, is there a process for that, or do you have an approach for it?
Yeah, I actually do. So it's a framework that I was helping clients with long before I ever started my own brand. And it really does start with getting clear on who you are and how you want to be perceived and your convictions, and all the way from like your brand story and what inspired you to create your business to all the way to the words that you use in your marketing, which I call phraseology. And I think going back to what you said earlier, I think brand in the direct response copywriting world used to be seen as like airy fairy fluffy BS, because there were these hardcore direct response marketers who were like, why do I need to worry about brand? I can just create a product and drive traffic and sell it until no one buys it anymore, and I'll just do it again with a new product. The people who are doing that are seeing their conversion rates go down, they're seeing their revenue go down, and the brands that you see coming up on the scene are ones who really are building a strong community and a strong brand presence. And a lot of that has to do with getting clear on their brand voice. And so I think at the end of the day, it's asking yourself, what kind of business do I want to be proud to create? What do I stand for? And not being afraid to ruffle a few feathers in the process, because people are putting their money where their values are. 89% of people say that they want to purchase from brands and businesses who share their values. That used to be unheard of in marketing. It was like, who cares? Who cares what Amazon's values are? Who cares what Procter & Gamble's values are? And now you see people actively seeking out other brands and businesses, wanting to know what they stand for and what their values are. And so I think it's a really foundational process to go through as you're starting your business, because that will then inform all of your messaging, the way you run your team, the way you handle stakeholders or other people in your organization. It becomes so much more than a marketing tool. It really becomes that manifesto, which manages all, communication inside and outside of your business.
Yeah, I love that you said the word manifesto, because what I have found, in particularly talking other business leaders, leading businesses myself, everyone wants to jump into the strategy and tactics, right? Like, what's the ad? What's the landing page? But what people don't forget, what they forget to do is just sort of quote unquote your manifesto. Like, what do you stand for? So a great manifesto, for example, is Johnson & Johnson. They had a credo, or sometimes there's different names for it, but essentially, they created it in the 1900s. And the way they handled the crisis in the 1980s was based on that credo. And I think some companies don't handle crises or don't express their brand in a way that they fall off their values. Like, I have a format that I use, like a plan on a page, and really kind of covers your vision, your mission, and your behaviors and values. And that's on the left side. That is the first thing you have to do. Then you get into the planning side, which is like objective goals. What are your objectives? What are your goals? And what strategies and measures are you going to do in the short term? But it's interesting how so many people that the experience correlates, in the sense that everyone forgets the fundamentals, who you are, what you do. Like, I love, like, Princess Margaret, for example. We conquer cancer in this lifetime. So when you hear that they have 6 football fields of research facilities, you sort of would ask, why in God's name would they do that? Because they're trying to conquer cancer in this lifetime. And so everything they do spills out from that vision, the way the brand is enacted, and it's authentic through every single touch point. I did the Ride to Conquer Cancer. So like, everything they do goes back, and the brand that's consistent from soup to nuts, how they spend their money and how they communicate their brand and who they connect with. So awesome. And I wanted to shift a little bit on, a little bit about the future of marketing. How do you stay, on top of the constantly changing landscape? Like, I know myself, all these AI tools, and they're all promising these things that it, to me and many other people, feels like, okay, I know I got to use this thing. It's not the end all, but it's just sort of like it's happening so fast. I'll talk about that report from Trend Hunter. It's hard
Yeah.
to process. It's even hard to process the rate of change and say, okay, how do I filter what's important? And even as all the tools that I have, I find myself, and I don't know if you find yourself, it's like, oh my God, like one more thing that I got to actually think about. And it's, oh, Clubhouse was a
Yeah.
crazy thing 18 months ago. It's like, oh my God, like, where, how do you, what do you see on that? And how do you think the best way to stay updated, or what's working or what's not?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I find myself even the same, like it's easy to get so caught up in in the rapid change. And then there's so much fear mongering out there, people saying, if you don't do this, you're going to be left behind. And I don't necessarily agree with that, because while it's true, like, obviously it was like when the internet became a thing, it was like, hey, you better start using this internet thing. Of course, everyone eventually, was using the internet. I wouldn't say I'm someone who's like a first mover, an early adopter. And so I tend to kind of sit back and watch. And I dabble, like for me, I think AI is great. Obviously, it's here to stay, similar to what you said earlier with the hammer analogy. When people ask me like, oh my God, it's replacing copywriting, I'm like, no, it's replacing word generation. And anyone
Yeah.
who knows what copywriting is knows that copywriting is so much more than just bleh words, right? It's understanding where you're going, who are you speaking to, what do you have to say, why is it important, and then being able to craft really good prompts that even gives you an ounce of something that might be useful in your output. But then there's tools for, video editing and design and all of this. And I think at the end of the day, I always like to go back to the basics and go, until we're selling to robots, like until robots are our customers, one thing is always true, that like we are humans selling products to other humans. And I think we want to be careful not to lose sight of that, because, I have seen people say, oh, I've fired my entire support team and only have one support person now who uses AI to do all of their customer support. And from a perspective of efficiency, a lot of business owners see that and they go, wow, like that's amazing. Think of how much money I'm going to save in my business. This is incredible. I'm going to do that too. But then you think, wait a second, imagine what the experience is for the customer on the other end. Like, is it truly a helpful experience? Maybe. And I would hope that, companies are really looking to this. But at the end of the day, there is more and more mistrust than ever before on the internet with scammers, impersonators.
Yeah.
Everybody now is used to getting a million calls, text messages, like Instagram DMs. I mean, you name it, there's people out there trying to scam you. And we've all become so like savvy to it, but we also then notice when a business really goes above and beyond to help us. And so for me, again, and I'm not saying this is the right thing, because I'm definitely not someone who has, I'm not creating AI programs and saying that if you don't buy this, you're going to be left behind. For me, I think, hey, this is a time to really double down on what makes us uniquely human, which for me is empathy and really helping your clients get results. And if there's AI tools that you can integrate into your business that help you do that quicker, and then great, go for it. But for me, I'm more of a look for the problem and then solve the problem kind of person, as opposed to I need to make my entire business AI so that I can save a bunch of money,
Yeah, it's the wrong motivation. I like what you said. A couple of things to add to that, or compliment is, I love that you said like it is about empathy, because it is about how we feel. Like I know I get frustrated. Um, I have slightly raised my voice at these robots on the phone. It's like, get me a human, please, because they just don't
Yeah.
get what it is, and it's like, okay, calm down, just a robot, it doesn't know. But yeah, they're not perfect. And I think it's the one advice I always go back to, and I kind of forgot about it, and I talked to my old former boss who's now semi-retired. It's always not best to market, always beats first to market. And I think, if you are best to market, it's rooted in those things you just said. It's about that consumer experience. Can that customer experience be accelerated by AI? And then you can handle more people rather than the motivation. I think the thing that I lament the most, and it's a human psychological trigger, people are more motivated by a loss than a gain. And so a lot of this, I find a bit of a resurrection of this old salesy is that if you don't do it now, you'll be gone forever. That's like a very 21-year-old type mentality versus, if you're more mature, no, there's going to be another house you can buy. There's going to be another great deal on a car you can buy. Like, it's always going to be there. It will shift, but it's not getting lost in the moment. But I find like we're just bombarded. And I sometimes do get lost in the moment. Like, I'm like, okay, David, like, pull yourself back up, go back to the fundamentals, back to the framework. And I think it's important to figure out. I think a lot will change in the next couple of years on who is the best to market, because you get a lot of people, God bless their heart, but most of them won't make it to be big, but they're building cool stuff out of their basement, but they literally won't make it. It's just critical math, it's economies of scale. It's just a simple reality of the hard side of business. And you just hope that you get on. The other thing too that's tricky, I was thinking about this the other day, you can implement all these AIs or whatever tools they may be, but they can be gone in 6 months from now. We actually used a tool at my work for like a meeting thing, and then they disappeared. Right. Luckily, it was like a little tool that we used 3 years ago. And then it's like, imagine, like we just moved their ERP system to Microsoft. But imagine if I moved it to this fly-by-night that's been around for 9 months. They run out of money. I mean, how many business Eaton's ran out of, like we've seen billion-dollar companies disappear overnight through mismanagement. The smaller you are, the greater the risk. So we also have to be careful not to like flip our entire business into something that, yeah, you might save money today, but you're going to lose your customer. And then now what? In 2 years, in 18 months from now, they went bankrupt. You can't deliver. So it's a very tricky and muddy road, I feel. And I think something that people have to have. It's just one more thing as a business owner and leader, you have to have a super keen eye on.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I always think, at the end of the day, like people ask me, I had someone ask me today, oh, what AI do you use to edit your videos on Instagram? And I'm like, there's no AI, there's a real human. And, does he use AI to speed up his process? Yeah, there's AI to help remove, gaps in audio, to help remove filler words, to help remove, oddities in the audio quality and things like that. I hope he uses that, because guess what? I don't want to learn how to use it, but he's an expert and he's a genius at video editing, and it makes his job easier. I'm getting a higher quality product at the end of the day. And so for me, it's how do you use these tools in tandem with the experts that really know how to use them well, and know at the end of the day, there's still a human who's vouching for the quality and saying, yeah, I sign off on this, and this is a great experience. And I think, I think it'll all change continue to change very quickly. But at the end of the day, as long as you're focusing on how you're adding value to the marketplace, that's something that cannot just be replaced like that, and I see all these AI tools popping up, and it's because it's all based on the same open source technology. And so you look at all of these different tools and you're, integrating them into your business, like you said. Yeah, and how are they monetizing? And they're all just trying to get data and users. And at the end of the day, it feels like a race to the bottom in a lot of ways. So it's got everything with a grain of salt,
I agree with you, and I think I've always said marketing and communication and sales all the same thing. It is an art and science, and so the tools are the science part of it. To your point, okay, analyze the script, remove ABC, whatever, or summarize this. It'll probably do a good job at that. But you still need the art. Like, can you ask AI to paint the Van Gogh? Well, that's special because of what's in the person's mind at that time. Sure, it could replicate it now, but that's because that thing existed. Somebody has to create that thing. I don't believe that I don't know. I mean, I don't think we'll get there anytime soon, but I think the whole aspect of art, the machine can't replace the art of communication. Even when you do the video, okay, what little, meme or gift do I put up there? Like, you have to have some artistic approach to the brand, the person. What would be on brand for you may not be on brand for me, and vice versa. And all those sorts of things. I think you can't use AI. I like what you said. It's what problem you're trying to solve, then go get the tool to do that as fast as possible. you can't replace, in my opinion, you can't replace the art, or at least I don't want to replace the art of it, because I think that's where the beauty lies.
Yeah, and it's the critical problem solving piece. It's how can you use tools to free up some of the mundane, repetitive, time consuming tasks so that you can open up more time and space for real creative problem solving. And that's where the money is. That's where the yes, speed up the lower level tasks that you spend time doing so that you can focus on serving your audience in a bigger way.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that. I guess we've been going for a little bit here. We can go on for a bit. I'll ask kind of one last question in terms of like, if you could go back and, you started a business that's been very successful, and it's been obviously, like most journeys, it's always a little windy. You've had ups and downs and sideways, as is normal. But if you were to give one advice to a business leader out there, what would be or the 2 or 3 top things that you'd tell them? Hey, make sure you get this right, or don't ignore this. What would you say?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I think it would be, no matter what, keep moving forward and making decisions. I think, at least in my life, there's been so many times where I've not made a decision because I felt like I didn't know the answer, or I didn't know the right answer. And so I stayed in this unknown gray area waiting for this moment of clarity. And you realize that clarity comes through action. And if I could give advice to anyone, it would be make decisions, even if they're the wrong ones, because decisions help you move faster, which then ultimately help you succeed faster. I think that's honestly the biggest thing. I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist, and I've had this this fear or this belief that unless I knew the exact path to get where I wanted to go, I wasn't ready. Like, I can't move
Yeah.
forward until I know the exact step-by-step path that I need to take in order to get to the next level of where I want to go. And then you realize that, like, wait, nobody knows what the path is. There's this
Yeah.
illusion that you look at someone who's more successful than you, and you think they know the path. And it's like, no, they were just as uncertain as you were. And I think really understanding that clarity comes through action.
Yeah, that's incredible advice. I think it really ties up with, I think it was Steve Jobs that said it. You can only connect the dots looking backwards. And so those action create those dots. So for me, when I heard that, I'm for sure a recovering perfectionist. I still have that. And the bigger the businesses I have managed and the bigger the teams I have managed, I have to make decisions with not knowing everything and entrusting and empowering. But what kind of gets me to be okay with that is that I like what you said, is that clarity, clarity through action. That just create the data point. And I got like goalposts, what to do, what not to do. Either or, you're going to learn. If it's good, go that way. If it's not good, don't do it again and go find another path. And then you kind of connect. But it's just, myself being an inherent perfectionist and type A, grade A type student, just like, I'm like you, I'm like, everything's got to be perfect. How do I do the landing page? Then what happens here? It's like, I don't know. Just now it's more like, just go, run it through the system, and the consumer will tell us what's right. But I have to remind myself to kind of go through that you do get that clarity through action, and you can't predict it. So, and what you think doesn't always end up being what it is. So.
Oh my gosh. Like, it's the same as with marketing, like everyone always, I always laugh at this because I'm a marketer, everyone thinks everything I do is so strategic. And like, sometimes it is. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know, I just needed to build a landing page. And so I put and they'll be like, well, why did you put this here? And I'm like, I don't know. There's times where like you're just going with it, and you're making decisions, and you never know until you try. And that is marketing. There's no, like, people come to me and be like, what is the perfect, funnel and I'm like, to ask that question knows that you don't understand marketing, because it depends on so many things. And the perfect funnel is a done funnel so that you can at least start testing and trying something, and then marketing is what you do after that. Oh, this worked. Wonder why. this didn't work. Wonder why. Let's try to change something. Let's, it's,
Yeah.
and so I like to apply that same scientist mentality just to life in general. And it's a muscle I'm training because it doesn't come naturally to me like many people, I'm sure, but really being okay with moving forward in uncertainty.
I think what done is better than perfect. I love what you said that. And even if you look at many people, and then we'll wrap up with this, is like even Alex Ramosi, super successful launch, the whole 9 yards. But when you actually listen to their story, everything he did was engineered, but how he got here wasn't. It was through action. Acquisition.com came to be because they were helping people, saw that it worked, had a lot of money by exiting businesses and said, maybe we can be this. And that's literally how it happened. When he sold those businesses, that wasn't the plan, right? And now he's on to build $1 billion thing. But it was sort of through that action. You actually don't know what catalyst will happen. So it may work, it may not work. But I think the key thing, I think you said this earlier, just keep moving forward, right? Like don't stop. The earth spins one way, one direction constantly. Just keep going, right? So I guess
Yeah.
we'll end with that. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate what you're doing for the marketing world, educating all the copywriters that graduate from your program. And thank you for being a voice of reason, a voice of authenticity, and sharing your skills and expertise with the market. I love everything you do on your Instagram feed. So thank you and wish you much continued success and accolades.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. I enjoyed our conversation.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye.